Hey, Michael, it's great to see you here again today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed our first couple of conversations, and I'm really looking forward to this one because you always ask me questions where I've sort of got to go, I wonder what the answer to this is going to be. So,
Yeah, and you're live from your garage today. Lots of stuff going
live
on in
from
the
my
house.
garage as my reno team is replacing my kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I appreciate you jumping on here. And I know that with renos and stuff, it can be a little bit hectic, but really appreciate the time you're going to spend today. And this topic today, we're just seeing so much going on with all of COVID, and everybody's busy leading their teams and leading, there's so much change and all this stuff. And what I wanted to kind of roll around today were the buckets of life that entrepreneurs have to deal with. And, what are the areas in your life as a leader and an entrepreneur that you may have been neglecting, and one of the ones that you've been working on, and how to navigate through those as we kind of hopefully come back to a little bit more normalcy.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a great question. I use five key buckets, and each one has subcategories.
Yep.
But my first one right off the bat is my physical health. Taking care of the body.
Yeah.
And my second one is mental health. What am I doing to be mentally sharp, mentally with it? What The next one is financial, in
Hmm.
terms of how are my finances, in the business, personally. And I split those out because I think often sometimes entrepreneurs mush them together, and I actually split them.
Yeah.
And another one is relationships. Who are you hanging out with? Are they supporting the future you want to have, or are they dragging you down? Do they give you energy or take energy? And the fifth one is purpose. Are you doing things that you think are important?
Yeah, I love those. And I have a set too that's very similar in alignment with that. And, so many interesting things. And I like how you started it off with health. And one of the quotes that we were just chatting about that I've liked, and I've heard Joe Polish say a few times along the way too. Not sure who came up with it, but the person who has their health has 1,000 dreams, and the person who doesn't has but one.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think we've all seen people that may be fairly successful and well and have a lot of wealth that they've accumulated, but they haven't accumulated a lot of health along the way.
Yeah.
And if you're in your 60s and in crummy shape, it's really hard to get into shape. It's way easier to be in shape in your 40s and 50s when you notice things are maybe declining, and then keep it
Yep.
going. And most people I know that are wealthy but not healthy would trade all of their wealth. As long as they still have a roof over their head and food on their table, they would trade all the extra to be healthy again.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? And health can deteriorate so quickly in certain things, whether it be cancer or any of these other different things that are taking us these days. And you look back and you say, well, should I have put my 12 hours in at work, or should I have taken care of my health so that I could live longer, right?
Yeah, and I'm of, work, particularly for entrepreneurs, you have to remember that the business is there to serve you, not the other way around.
Love
And
that.
I think we've all been in times I have where I sort of gotten up and going, this is turned around. That I'm serving the business. It's demanding what I do versus me making the choices of what I'm doing. And all
Hmm.
along, I think during your life, you've got to, make choices of how much time am I going to be working, and what time am I going to be doing for me, and what time for my family, and what time for my friends, and have what for you, however you define it, is balance. And it's not that the business determines how much it takes and you work with what's left, is I determine how much the business takes, and then I work with what is left and put it into the
That's it.
buckets.
When you set up those, do you do them? Do you do them once a year, or do you kind of lay out your plans for a quarter, or how do you set those up for yourself so that you're actually hitting some of these things that you want to hit?
I always make, I sit and sort of have what I call my lifetime goals. Like what is
Yeah.
the, almost like the end game in those categories.
Hmm.
And it's not
Right.
that specific. It's
Right.
more general ideas. Like for, my mental health, I want to be sharp and bright and engaging right up
Yep.
until, the end.
Yep.
That's not very measurable, right? So I then look at some 3-year goals, some 1 year, and then I go by quarter, and I'll look at them normally every week when I set my week up. What I'm going to be doing this week, I'll look at those 5 categories and make sure I've got something happening in those.
So you review them pretty much every
Yeah,
week.
yeah,
And
and I'll
then what
change them.
happens? Yeah.
You know, when I
What
make them,
happens?
when I first made them, I started using this system 19 years ago. When I
Yeah.
first made them, some of them are very different than now than they were then. So it's not like it's a life sentence that you make them and they're cast in stone forever, which is why I think some people don't do it because they think then they're stuck with them.
Yeah.
Is that you make them, and if they don't serve you anymore, then change it up. But always have something you're moving towards.
Yeah, I like that. Moving towards is such an important part in the outlook of our future, right?
Always.
Always moving ahead and chunking it down into those from the life goals down into the 3 year to the 1 year to the quarter to the week allows you to make those life goals happen as you work it back up. I mean, if you've been doing it for 19 years, I'm sure a lot of those things have been realized.
Yeah, a lot have, and you know the key to for me is just to always be in motion towards those things. You know, it doesn't, and so sometimes I think you, let's say one of the ones with my wife Rhonda and I is we want to go on a really nice trip to Africa, and so you go, okay, I wanted to go Africa. Well, it doesn't quite work now with COVID, and financially it's a big hit, and a number of other things, and you don't do anything. Well, I may have for the quarter, what I'm going to do is I want to research these 3 countries in Africa. Or I'm just going to make a
Right.
phone call to my buddy in New York that runs the best African tours, you know. And so I'm just going to call
Yeah.
him and start to touch base and just have a conversation. As long as you're doing something towards it, you feel like you're always making motion as opposed to, I'm not doing anything at all.
Yeah, building that
Yeah.
momentum, right? You know, on those other buckets, we've talked a little bit about physical health and mental health, and then relationships. I mean, lots have changed. We've been cooped up. We haven't been able to see people. We've been, there's relationships have changed over the last little while. And what sort of does that bucket look like for you?
Oh, well, you're right. The relationship has changed a lot. I've actually reached out to some people and had Zoom conversations when, in fact, I probably wouldn't have seen them. Like I've got a buddy in
Yeah.
Vancouver. We would normally touch base when I was out there or he was in here, which means we'd only touch
Yep.
base maybe every 4 years or something. Well, now I'm sort of Zooming with him. I've got another buddy in Australia. And so that part of the relationship actually got a little bit better because instead of waiting for us to be in the same geographic location, we connected through Zoom.
Yeah.
Other ones, interesting, close friends that live around me that I would normally see, haven't really seen them. Other than we modify what we do. Instead of getting together for dinner or something, we get together
Yeah.
outside and have a snowshoe hike, or now we go out for a paddle or whatever it is. And so
Yep.
we'll talk at a distance. And as COVID is getting better and everybody's getting vaccinated, we're starting to get closer again.
Yeah. No, I like that too. And then your mission purpose one that you had. How do you manage that one?
So that one has taken me. Oh, I'm going to talk about it sort of simply, uh, but it has taken me a long time to figure it out simply. So it was one of those ones
I
of
think
like,
I think we're
okay,
all in
this
the same
took a
boat.
lot of hard work to figure out the one thing I'm going to be doing. But when I
Yeah.
really honed it down, and I have a history with Outward Bound and Outward Bound Wilderness Schools and
Yeah.
other things for youth at risk. And one of the things in those organizations that we do is take people out in the wilderness, take them out camping when they've never been there before, and put them into new challenges.
Yeah.
And one of the rules when you go camping is that you always leave a campsite better than you found it. And my purpose comes from my campsite mentality, in that I always want to leave every person and every place better than I found it. And if I live my life like that, it'll be a good life.
I love that. And that's a lesson I learned in
Yeah.
scouting when I was a Boy Scout. And it's the same sort of thing. When you go camping in Scouts, it's like you leave the campsite
Yeah.
proper, right? And I think that's a
So
wise
then,
lesson,
so
Michael.
then
I love
below
that.
that, I've got all the ways that I do that. You know, but ultimately that's my why. That's why I'm walking around on the planet. And do I always do that? No, but if I aspire to it, I can always see, okay, I'm making progress in that. I'm doing it more than I used to, whatever. And when I don't do it, it's blatantly obvious to me that I just fell off my own wagon.
It's interesting when I look at the structure that that we both use with a few different buckets or whatever the case is. But having the structure allows things to make come
Yeah.
alive, I think. And if you don't sort of think about this stuff and write this stuff down and potentially even put it in your calendar, depending on what the action items are, then things just go on and they just kind of happen. And it's not that happening things that happen are bad, but a lot of times you kind of get through a year or a month or whatever, and you're like, what just happened here? Like nothing really moved ahead. And when we're talking about that momentum and that moving ahead, I think, knowing the clarity of knowing those things brings you the confidence to actually move
Well,
ahead
it
with it.
does. And your point of looking at them, like every week, I'll
Yeah.
sit down when I plan my week and I'll look at purpose. Okay, campsite mentality, mindset. What am I going to do this week about
Yeah.
that? And it may be, well, I'm going to reach out to this person, or I'm going to go give support to this person, or I'm going to do this for my wife, Rhonda, or whatever it might be. But it's in the front of my brain. So I look at it, I go, okay, this is something I can do about that this week, as opposed to, as you say, one day's the next. What's that
Yeah.
quote from
Yeah.
Shakespeare? Tomorrow creeps on in its petty pace, right? It's like,
Like that one.
no, I don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
I'm more like,
No, I don't either.
I want to be a brilliant torch and have it burn brightly before passing it on to future generations.
Yeah, that's a great way to wrap up our conversation here today, Michael, on this particular topic. And I just really enjoy talking to you about this kind of stuff. And what I'd like to do is, if you can let everybody know how they could get a hold of you and what you do with all of your coaching, just take a few moments and
Sure.
let
Well,
us know.
I coach a very select few business entrepreneurs. They've got to have their own business and be successful and be up to big stuff. And I help them realize that. Normally around the buckets that I talked about health and finance and the whole bit. And we really focus on the business. But when you're an entrepreneur,
Yeah,
you're linked to your business, right? So you can't work with one and not the
so
other.
true.
And the way to get me easiest is to email me, and it's Michael at redvestcorp.com.
Perfect.
redvestcorp.com.
Right on. That's excellent. And I'll
Great.
include it in the show notes and everything too, as well, Michael. Yeah. So thanks so much for spending some time with me here on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast, and look forward to
My
a chat
pleasure.
in the
Thanks
near
for asking
future.
some good soul searching questions. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, right on.
Okay, bye bye.
Okay. We'll talk soon.